Hi, this is Rob Simone here on Resonance FM. You are invited to come along for the ride. The UK's only full-time alternative information program. Join us for this weekly journey of discovery here on Resonance FM 104.4.
Yes, welcome back to the program. My name is Rob Simone. This is the Rob Simone Talk Show, and I'm very glad that you are listening to us right now. We are on 104.4 FM in the great city of London, and of course worldwide on the internet at robsimone.com. And today is part 2 of our very special look at the Hopi Nation. Its customs, its traditions, the leadership are speaking directly to us, and we are called upon to get involved with a struggle that they are going through about this Senate Bill 2109 that threatens to take away their Aboriginal water rights, that threatens to take away the lifeblood of their community and the way they have operated, the way they do their desert farming, the way they do their ceremonies. It is something that not only sustains the Hopi Nation, it also is part of their universal dedication to the planet and to all peoples. They maintain, as you'll hear Leroy Lewis talk a little bit later, a harmonic balance. We're also going to hear from Bem Devomsa, who is the former tribal council leader, who is also an attorney. He's going to give us a very interesting legal perspective and some surprising information on where the sovereignty lies in Hopi. It's not what you think. And first we're going to hear from Ronald Wadsworth, who is the spokesperson for the highest religious priest of Shamopavi village. This is a very special program. I traveled out on several occasions to the Hopi reservations with the help of Miriam Delicato and was out there for a good deal of time talking, listening, walking. Even I had a chance to visit and observe some of the dances that go on. And some of the ceremonies which were profound. And I got to see firsthand what very, very few outsiders see, and that is that there is a living culture that is inexorably tied to the elements, the four directions. There is such a dedication and commitment to maintaining a balance that if you see it for yourself like I have, you are convinced that the Hopi people are very different and very special when it comes to anybody else in this world, because they have an unbroken history of a connection with the earth. And I've got a chance to glimpse that firsthand. So please listen to this very carefully and get involved. Do what you can. Contact your senator and say, you have to stop Senate Bill 2109 in any shape or form, because it is not fair to take away someone's water rights. It's not fair to let corporations do whatever they want, to give them lease, to give them the rights to the minerals that belong to the Hopi, and to hold harmless any litigation, which is also part of this bill. It says that they cannot be sued for any reason. It is what I would call a travesty of justice. So get involved. The website with all of the contact information is traditionalhopi.org. It has all the phone numbers of the White House, the senators, Senator Kyle, who put this bill forward, that you can easily, just with one click, do your part. There's a petition that you can sign, which literally takes 30 seconds. It's all linked up there. So take a listen to this as we go through what I think is a very special look of some of the elders, spokesperson, and the former head of the Tribal Council of Hopi. All right, welcome back to the program. We are here in Hopi talking with Ronald Wadsworth, who is the spokesperson for the religious leadership and the highest chief of the village of Shamopavi. And his family has held leadership positions in the Hopi way of life for generations. For the past 23 years, he has been serving the highest priest chiefs of Shamopavi village. And I'd like to welcome Ronald Wadsworth to the program. Welcome.
Hello.
Well, I want to thank you for talking to me today. And this is sort of a continuation of the conversation we had with Radford, who is the Snake chief priest. and we were talking about Hopi. We were talking about the origins of Hopi, and it led us into a conversation about the water, which is, of course, what is pressing the Hopi peoples at this time. But first, can you just tell us a little bit about your role in being a spokesperson for sort of the administrative affairs of the village of Shimopavi?
Well, in my capacity serving the leadership as a spokesman, I take a lot of different issues, like domestic things, for the people. Also do legal things, for the children. And as far as if people want a homestead, we find land assignments for them, facilitate them by approving utility services. So in my line of work, I do a lot of things, including political matters like being the go-between with the leadership and the tribal government or the outside world. So that's what I've been doing all these years.
Well, tell people a little bit how it works, in other words, about the religious leadership and how you have been the voice of the highest priest chiefs.
Well, in Hopi, we are a traditional government, and the Hopi Constitution affords two governments: the representative form, where they send representation to the tribal council, which comprises the tribal council government, and the traditional, where we govern ourselves through our religious traditional laws. We don't have representation on council. So, but whatever the council does affects our people also. So in that regard, the leadership sanctioned several of us to become spokesmen, to serve in that capacity, to be the people communicating with the tribal government. And so in 1989, I was sanctioned to serve in that capacity to the leadership.
And so, as it stands now, you have a variety of things that you're involved with, but I would imagine that this 2109 is something that takes up a lot of your time. Can you tell people, really, give people a sense of how this thing started to come about, this water rights issue where now they're trying to manipulate and even remove some of the rights that you've had for a very long time?
Like I said earlier, we don't have representation, and I believe this water issue had been ongoing since in the 80s. Just recently, we've heard about it. We know that there's a coal company, mining company north of us that are pumping an aquifer water from the using it for slurry coal. We knew about that, but this water bill that just surfaced here. We are so affected by that because our waters are now depleting. Our ponds, our streams, our little springs are now depleting, and our religious functions rely on these springs. They're sacred springs where ceremonies take place, and we see that now depleting, and it's affected the ceremonies. So, of course, the leadership are very concerned about that. So we began to look into this bill and what this bill was saying. It wants us to waive our Aboriginal sovereign rights to the Little Colorado River in exchange for a groundwater system that will come to Hopi from the Lower Colorado River. But the leadership are not happy with that because they do not want to waive any sovereign Aboriginal rights to anything, any resources, because they believe that they are the stewards and the caretakers of this land for the Creator, and the Creator did not give us that right to waive any of these rights away. We are protectors, stewards of this land. So this bill is they don't favor this bill. It kind of works against their beliefs, and because of how it affects our ceremonies. So it's a very pressing issue now, this water bill with Hopi.
Well, tell me about, you mentioned the mining. Tell me about sort of a little bit of the history of what kind of mining has gone on here and how it's affected the Hopi peoples, whether it be uranium or coal.
It's coal mining. It's a strip mining up north of us. and they strip mine this coal and then slurry that to another generating station, and they use an aquifer, the Navajo aquifer, the pristine water, to slurry that to another site there. And we believe that the water table has depleted so much so that it affects our springs, and so now our springs are drying up, and that's why we don't want. Well, this bill says this bill has a language in there that includes the coal company that is mining, that they will have so many acre feet in this bill if this bill passes. Well, the Hopi Indians have Aboriginal sovereign water rights. This company does not have that, but this bill will give that to them, and it will take away our sovereign rights to the Little Colorado River. So there's an unfair exchange in this. So what happens if the coal mining company takes all our water? What about our future generation of Hopi people? It's not a good bill.
Well, going back to the Little Colorado Spring, it sounds like this is a massive flow of water, of underground water. Does the government, did they say in this bill what they want to use it for?
That's one thing that has not been mentioned, that what their plans are for the Little Colorado River water. They made no mention of that. So this is one area I think we need to look into also. There's cities that are growing in the area that are situated along the Little Colorado River, like Holbrook, Sholo, Winslow, Flagstaff, and they're growing cities, So I think, there's probably your answer there. They want everybody wants water. Maybe that's the future plans of that water.
Well, what is the government offering in return? Tell us a little bit about the mechanics of this bill. What are they hoping that you will agree to?
They want us to agree to waive and hold harmless the United States government for any injury to Hopi water rights or to the quality of the water, and also to any of its employees, agencies, now and forever. That's what they want us to agree to. So, and I find that very disturbing, because I think the impact that the United States government has already done to our water quality is so much so that we're going to have our Indian people suffering throughout the years, not only by drinking bad water, but by having no water. It's going to disrupt the ecosystem. Everything will be affected. The environment, the birds, the animals, the trees, every little living thing. They can't speak, so we should speak for them and say, no, defeat this bill. It's not a good bill.
So how do you think that people can get involved with this issue? If they want to respond to what the Hopi are asking for, how can they get involved? What would you suggest people do to help stop this bill?
I think that they would need to, I guess, look at themselves too, because this water crisis is happening not only here in Hopi, but all over the globe. And Hopi believe that they are the microcosm. What happens here affects everybody throughout the world. So if we all come together and protect our natural resources, vital natural resources, we can manage to convince the legislators, those that do make these decisions, that these precious natural resources need to be safe, protected. That's what I think that we all can do to help one another, not only here in Hopi, but throughout the whole world, because everybody's facing these crises, throughout the world, not only Hopi.
And this really sounds like it could be jeopardizing the long-term future of the Hopi culture.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, the springs have already been affected, which affects our ceremonies. When the rains don't come, the plants that we use in our custom, in our paint, in our dress, all that could be affected. So it's very, very critical that we not adopt this bill, for the sake of. In our ceremonies, we pray for all life, and if we can't do the ceremonies, then it affects everything, throughout the globe, So that's how serious this is.
Ronald, could you tell me a little bit about your role as a spokesperson for the religious leadership?
Well, in my years as growing up here, on Hopi reservation, being a Hopi, I was born to a high leadership family. My father's side being the Bear Clan, they are the highest leaders of our Hopi government here. Only Bear Clans can hold a highest chief position. I've been serving 3 of them, so far. So they've taught me a lot of things. My father taught me a lot of things about being Hopi. My mother also had a religious position role, and my uncles, they all have sacred positions in these ceremonies. So I I was born into leadership families, from both my mother and my father's side, and I've listened to them talk about the future, the past and the future, about how things were and how things are today and how things will be in the future, and how our lives will change drastically as we grow older. It's kind of hard to believe some of these things, when they tell us that. But as we grow older, then we begin to see these things, and you wonder, how do these old folks know about the future? But we see that. When I got initiated into the men society, that's when I really began to understand, because that's when very sacred things are taught to you, and then my eyes began to open, and as I participated and got ordained into some of the ceremonies, I really began to understand Hopi life and why Hopi was put on this earth and what our role is. Each society of peoples have their own responsibility, and we're put in the specific corners of the world to hold this world in balance. And we hope we were placed here at this area, like a high vortex area. The meridians of this world were placed along those lines to hold this world in balance through our ceremonies. And so many of the things that I was taught, I began to see, and I began to see it now. When I became a spokesman, and the leadership began to talk to us, and I compare that to the outside world of what's going on the outside. The outside world is very fast. They move very fast. The Hopi people here, they take time and they study and they take things into consideration before they make decisions, all based on the path that they're supposed to follow. So putting these things two together, I began to see a lot of change from when I was young to today. And now I look at my kids, and when my kids grow up, their life is going to be a complete change from today. But only if we can manage to hold on to what we have to help to keep the balance of the world, can we maintain peace and harmony for future generations to come. So I've been taught a lot of things, and I've seen it. I've seen some come to pass. Some of them have not yet come to pass, but we are in a position to make a difference, to guide our lives in the right direction.
Ronald Wadsworth, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and I wish you well, and I hope everyone gets involved and contacts their representatives, any level, all levels. Time is of the essence, and the Hopi people and the future generations really are asking for help. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my views.
Next up on this very special program, we're going to be talking with Leroy Lewis, an elder who lives in First Mesa. We recorded this interview at his house on top of the plateau, and we were lucky enough to actually spend some time with him over the course of several days, listening him discuss what is the importance of the traditional way of life and his perspectives on what a disruption of the ownership and the distribution of water could mean to his people and to the future of Hopi. Welcome back to the program. We're talking now with Leroy Lewis, who lives in the village of Sestopmove and has been practicing his sacred ceremonies for the past 50 years with his village and is a member of the Flute Clan. I want to welcome Leroy Lewis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I thank you very much for having a chance to talk to you.
It's absolutely my pleasure, Leroy. And the reason why we're talking is because there is a lot happening right now with the people of Hopi. And this is a very stressful time and a very, confusing time. And we've been talking with other elders in Hopi about the water issue and what the meaning of water is, because it has a very special meaning for the people of Hopi. Mm-hmm. And everyone knows that you can't live without water, but for the Hopi, that water goes even deeper than that, doesn't it?
Right. Water is very sacred to the Hopi. We are practitioners from the immortal being who had identified our clans since time immemorial and had given us his work, meaning that he was taking care of the whole world. And he identified the different Hopi clans and had issued his sacred ceremonies to the different clans to perform for him. So we Hopi had accepted that and are performing the very, very sacred ceremonies. And this includes water. So water, again, is very sacred to Hopi for all the living things on this world. We pray for everybody, not just for Hopi. We pray for mankind. So we are here on this arid land. So we practice our religious ceremonies. And when we have our circle, water is there with us. So we can communicate with one another. So that our prayers are sent out to the different directions, the four cardinal directions that we identify, so that our prayers are being sent by our messengers, mm-hmm. who would be the eagle and other birds that we use for our prayers. So they can communicate spiritually in taking our messages out, so that when these reach out to the different areas, maybe to the mountains, maybe to the clouds, our prayers, the birds, and what we have our ceremonies are all combined together so that we have rain. So I am mentioning the idea that we Hopis that live on this arid land need this water.
Do you think the voice of the people of Hopi is being heard?
I believe that some may have heard about the water issue. I don't know how far by media this issue have reached. And I hope our message to all the people that listen would consider Hopi, who is the practitioner and who is the carrier of water, to help us in the Anglo system to stop this Senate bill that's going forth to the Washington, D.C. office.
Leroy, this land that the Hopi are on is, of course, very dry and seems very dry, but yet there is so much life here, so much growth here. How has the traditional people worked with water throughout the ages?
Hopi refers to, in our language, Samit Nangwa, Namit Nangwa. Samit Nangwa, it means working together. Namit Nangwa means the participants who all come together and work harmoniously. So our religious ceremonies are tied to the water, the elements. So when our tradition, during our calendar cycle throughout the year, each clan had been dedicated by the immortal being to practice his services in a ceremonial perspective. Then, with that in mind, all the people that are involved with the ceremony work harmoniously together. All the prayers are together to bring forth the clouds, the rain, for our arid land.
What was the original beginning of Hopi, and what were there some sort of instructions by the Creator Spirit as it relates to water?
Yes, since man, through evolution, came to being, there was the red man, the yellow man, the black man, and the white man that was on the face of this earth. Each of these different ethnic groups, the immortal being had laid out corn for them to pick. All the other ethnic groups, the black man, the yellow, and the white man picked their corn. But the Hopi picked the smallest corn. So the immortal being had looked at the Hopi and said, "You're the one that I will issue what I have been carrying as far as the traditional sacred ceremonies." Then he identified the clans and issued them, each clan, the very sacred ceremonies that he had carried. So we practice that for mankind, so that again we work with the Masao, the immortal being, and the sacred ceremonies.
So this is something that goes back to the very beginning of the Hopi, and now it seems as though the future of the Hopi is uncertain with this very big movement to limit or restrict or change the whole way in which the water flows to the Hopi people.
Yes, it is. I don't understand the terms, conditions of this water settlement. So there's a big question. Why is this happening? And why is it happening to Hopi? Because we are on this arid land and we do need the water. So why Hopi had to be chosen to basically deplete the water to our people?
Well, Leroy, if the worst happens and this water is restricted, what will that mean to your traditional farming and the Hopi way of life?
First of all, it would break the link spiritually, because there's a separation that is being developed. And the people won't have good hearts in administering the ceremonies because, again, water would be there. We have been instructed by the immortal being to have harmonic balance for the world. And if these kind of issues come, again, our minds, our heart aren't all there. People from around the world who practice their religious ceremonies, we all pray to the same God. So there's no difference how we pray and who we are. We just want us to work together so we have this harmonic balance, and that we are all brothers and sisters throughout the world. So we all need to help one another to help stop this bill so we can continue with our practices, traditional ceremonies, and work for the benefit of mankind through our practices which had been instructed by the immortal being.
Leroy, was there some sort of consequence that was handed down by the immortal being if the water was not protected?
Yes. Yeah, we hope we have made a covenant which we have to continue. And if we don't continue, and if there's interference with our ceremonies, our heart's not all there. And if our heart's mind, body, and soul isn't there with the ceremonies, the immortal being again will take action. How that will happen, it is up to him, because prophecy has already been foretold from the Hopi. So there is consequences regarding this water, and we need to continue our practices, our sacred ceremonies, so we do continue to have this harmonic balance with one another.
Yeah. Leroy Lewis, I want to thank you so much for taking some time and talking about your traditions of the Hopi and what is happening to them now. And I encourage everyone listening to get involved with this SB 2109 that really is threatening the way of life of a culture that really is holding the balance of the world together.
Oui, Kokoi. All your listeners out there, again, I hope that you hear our voice and contact your senators so that we do stop this bill. Thank you. Kokoi.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Star Talk FM with me, your host, Rob Simone, where I bring to you the most interesting people on the planet. Science, consciousness, personalities. You never know what you're going to hear next. Tune in and find out what all the buzz is about. Listen live on 104.4 FM or worldwide online at robsimone.com.
Yes, welcome back to the program. This is part 2 of our very special look at the Hopi nations. We've been talking to some of the Hopi elders about the lifeblood of the Hopi, about the different perspectives, in some cases the origins of the Hopi, and the future. And this has been really an extraordinary look into the lives of the everyday people and how this issue of these water rights has gone all the way to the Senate floor and perhaps could go even further. Now, with your help, we've been trying to get this message out. We've been trying to get information out about this challenge that faces the Hopi Nation. And it has so far worked. And there has been a movement. There has been a response. And we need people to go that extra mile and contact their senator, sign the petition, because we have really been making a big wave so far since the first interview aired last week. Now, in the first interview, we talked exclusively with the snake chief priest of Shamopi village, who told us from beginning to end who the Hopi are, the creation story, the immortal being, and how they were tied to being sort of caretakers of this planet. And the Hopi have a very universal mindset. They don't just pray for Hopi. They don't just pray for rain. They pray and energize the whole world. They are very special and very unique in that regard. And now we are going to take a look at this issue from yet a different perspective, from a legal perspective. We're going to talk to an attorney who also practices the traditional ways, Ben Navumsa, who is the former head of the tribal council, and who has been training and coaching and has been the legal liaison to the Hopi Nation in regards to some of these very challenging federal matters. And I actually got to see him in action when I was out on the Hopi reservation about a month ago. I saw him during a training seminar going through the very complicated layers of governments out there, and with the villages and the Constitution, and then the federal, and then the state, and the tribal council. It is an extremely complicated matter to understand and coordinate all of this. So this is a very special moment in time when we have people not only united from the Hopi Nation, but the Navajos as well. They are standing up together and trying to fight this injustice, and they are taking back their sovereignty. They are, for one of the first times ever, using their voice to cast a message out on the wind, and people have really been responding to it now. So let's take a look at this last interview. And again, if you can listen and if you can do anything to help support this request on behalf of the Hopi, it would be very much appreciated. Okay, welcome back to the program here. I am very pleased to be joined with Ben Navumsa, who is the former chairman of the Hopi tribe and the owner of the Kiva Institute, which is a consulting and training firm. And Ben, I'd like you to welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Now, you are coming on as part of the series that we have been exploring the challenges that are facing the Hopi Nation these days, and it really has to do with water. And I know that this issue has probably taken on a lot of different forms over the years, but now, is it safe to say that it is really coming to a crisis point, and do the Hopi stand to lose a great deal at this juncture in this with this political maneuvering?
Well, it came from a years of negotiations between parties that are asserting their rights to the Little Colorado River, including Hopi and Navajo, and various the federal government, who's supposed to be the trustee for the tribes, and various non-Indian parties. But basically, the Senator John Kyle is the one that introduced the bill on February 14th of this year. But I think that's it's okay for tribes to settle their water rights and find ways to quantify the rights they have. But this particular one is really problematic in that it really doesn't do that for the tribes. In fact, it's intended to take away the water rights of the tribes in exchange for a small water or municipal water delivery system. But in that process, it requires them to waive their rights to the Winters rights, Federal Reserve rights to the waters of Colorado. And so, and I think that's part of the reason why, one of the main reasons why I think it's really problematic for Hopi. We find that this bill to be beneficial to non-Indians more than the tribes that is intended to benefit. Now, back then, and until 1936, there was no tribal government per se. There were 12 traditional villages, and so we claim that the villages are the ones that have the water rights, not the tribal council. And we also claim that the villages never delegated that power to the tribal council to waive the water rights for that belong to the villages. So that's one of our biggest arguments with the tribal council.
You're asserting that these different villages are sovereign, and if that's the case, they themselves would have the right to agree to this or not?
That's what we're asserting. Yes, that's what we're claiming. And it goes back to back in 2010, February of 2010, our own appellate court ruled in the final answer to Hopi villages certified question that the villages have this thing called inherent aboriginal sovereignty, and that any rights that they do not delegate to the tribal council through the Constitution are considered to be reserved powers that were reserved and to the villages. So we are claiming that water rights is one of them, because water is so very traditional and so sacred to us that we cannot give that up, because some of our villages, mine in particular, we still practice our ceremonies, and the water is just central to everything that we do. And so, because of that, we did not delegate that power to the tribal council.
Yeah, well, in light of that now, who has the right to negotiate on SB 2109?
Okay, and there's a problem here in that because of the federal government's government-to-government relationship, and it goes back to a federal law called the Indian Reorganization Act that was passed in 1934. The Indian Reorganization Act allowed tribes to set up modern forms of government to recognize and elect a leader, a tribal council, and that they would then serve as the spokesman for the tribe, the governing body of the tribe. So the federal government recognizes the tribal council as the official spokesman for the tribe, any tribe. However, at Hopi, we are much different. We have the traditional sovereign villages, and our constitution is very different from many IRA-type tribal constitutions. The regular IRA-type constitution is kind of like the United States Constitution that recognizes the power of the people. In our case, it recognizes the power of the villages. And so we had to use that forum to tell the United States, we had to use our tribal council as a forum to tell the United States that we rejected 2109. And that's what just about all the villages, maybe one village did not do it, but all of the villages did reject, either by a proclamation, a village resolution, or a letter stating their opposition to this bill.
There was a recent decision in Hopi Council chambers regarding the Little Colorado River water settlement. Can you tell us what transpired during that session and what it means to the bill?
Okay, well, there are actually two things that happened. On June 15th, the Tribal Council passed a resolution to reject Senate Bill 2109 by a vote of 11-4. However, the following Thursday, the same Tribal Council voted to endorse Senate Bill 2109 by a very narrow margin, 7-7, with the tribal chairman having to break a tie. So we have two conflicting resolutions, and by parliamentary rules, you cannot have that. So what we are doing is we have developed an action item and a resolution to rescind the latter resolution, so that there be no doubt that the Hopi tribe, Hopi people, reject 2109.
When you talk about the current chairman, he's referred to as Shing, right?
His last name is Simone.
Right.
And for short, everybody just call him Leroy Shing.
Right, Leroy Shing. Now, is he in good standing, or is there a movement to dethrone him, as it were?
Well, there is a current, especially because of the recent water rights issue. But prior to that, he tried to change our constitution to take the sovereign powers of the villages and make them a mere fourth branch of government. And that is really just against us as a people and our culture. So there is a movement, yes, to remove them.
And is that something that has enough support to carry through, do you think?
I think so. I think there's, especially with the last matter with water rights, I think that's, again, water is so sacred to us that we have a covenant with our caretaker of this world, that we have this traditional belief that water is one of the last things that we should never ever give up. And here is this individual who's trying to. He was not raised in the Hopi way, and so he doesn't understand. People are also very upset with him.
Yeah, I can imagine so. And you obviously were raised in the traditional ways of the Hopi and have partaken and still do in the ceremonies. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what about who are the corporations that are attached as part of the settlement agreement that is part of SB 2109?
The two noted ones are the Navajo Generating Station, a coal-fired power plant up there in Page. And there are about 6 owners of the Navajo Generating Station. One of the main ones are the Salt River Project, where Kyle used to be their attorney. And with his impending retirement, we are sure that he's going to go back and be their attorney again. And so he's doing whatever he can to make sure that SRP, the Navajo Generating Station, is taken care of. The other is the Peabody Coal Company, and they have been mining our coal since the latter 60s. And this bill is really geared and designed to benefit them. In fact, I maintain that this bill will give the Navajo Generating Station a federal water right to the Upper Basin, Colorado, of 34,100 acre-feet per year.
Well, Peabody Coal is given an extended lease with the companion bill, right?
In this bill, the Navajo Generating Station extended the life of its lease would be to 2044, and similarly, Peabody Coal leases will be extended also to 2044. Peabody Coal will also get its Kayenta mine permitted. And these are the kinds of things that they're supposedly administrative type things that are supposed to be negotiated between the companies and the tribes. Now, if they get this federal protection, then that pretty much takes away any ability of the tribes to negotiate the terms and conditions of the leases.
Is it true that Peabody Coal is released from any legal liability, both now and the future?
That is absolutely correct. You know, there's a damage, a permanent and damage to the Navajo aquifer, the aquifer that sits underneath our reservation, and there's other environmental violations. This bill will hold them harmless for any past, present, and future damages forever.
That's almost unheard of. I mean, why? Is there any precedent for some sort of sweeping forgiveness and sweeping hold harmless clause in a Senate bill like this?
I have never heard of anything, and so that was one of the things we said. We cannot tolerate this. We cannot let John Kyle waive any right that we have to file future damages against these companies. It's just unheard of. It's just, it's unconscionable.
Yeah, I mean, isn't there perhaps a danger that there could be some contamination of the water table with this type of mining that they undertake?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I know that there's already issues with arsenic and uranium seeping and contaminating the water tables. Who's responsible to clean this up? And
I think that the federal government has the trust responsibility over our natural resources, and if they allowed Peabody Coal Company to do this, if they allow the Navajo generating station to do this, they should be held responsible to correct that. Many people have been, and we have health problems, and people have passed away from different sorts of diseases coming from the pollution from the generating station, perhaps in the water, and contamination of the drinking water.
Well, what can people do that are listening to this right now to help support the Hopi in stopping SB 2109?
Well, we would like them to contact the Congress, the House of Representatives, the Senate, and then just to tell them to stop. We would like to have them to impose on Congress to stop this bill.
Do you think that if that does happen, they might take the internal wordage and verbiage of this bill, repackage it as something else?
I think that is a possibility that we thought of. They're just going to change the name and the number of the bill, and then just come back and try to reintroduce it again. So, but and there's been some talk about taking the provisions of the Peabody Coal and the Navajo generating station provisions out of that. But it still is going to require us to waive our water rights, which is not good. The Hopi tribe has a pretty solid water rights claim already filed in the Apache County Superior Court, and that is something that we would fall back on to strengthen and argue our case, because we believe that we have far superior rights than any other group.
Yeah, and this is something that I'm sure that the villages are claiming and securing aggressively, and you're part of the efforts to do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So is it a constant struggle? Do you have to defend this water from all different angles? I mean, it seems like if they don't try to get you one way, they might come at you from a state level. Do you see this problem as not going away anytime soon?
Well, when I mentioned that the water rights claim was filed in Apache County Superior Court, that's the state adjudication process that is required by what we call the McCarran Amendment. So anytime you want to quantify your water rights, you have to go through an adjudication process, and that is unfortunately through a state process. But I, for one, am very comfortable that we have far superior rights, and that nobody equals or parallels our rights. And so, but in order to do that, we have to make sure that we have enough support, our management plans, and everything that we need to do to support our claims. We need to get ready for that. Increase our capacity to be able to be good land stewards and manage our water. So those are the things we have to do to solidify our claim and defend our claim.
I see. Do you see this precedent being repeated or perhaps being attempted to other peoples, to other Native Americans, to other places where there is an abundance of water?
I see this as the first time ever that two tribes who are historically enemies have stood up against their own tribal government, against big federal government, against a very powerful senator, and said, no, this is enough. Enough is enough. The political landscape has changed. We are now, as tribal members, we have learned the white man's way. We can defend ourselves. We can do it our own. We can stand up to corporate America, and we can define our own terms. No longer are we going to have the federal government boss us around and exploit our resources. We can stand up to fight them. Because we have the technology, we have the knowledge, we have the resources to do it. And so I think this is a very historic moment in our time, and I think it's time that the other indigenous of the tribes can use this as a model and stand up to them and stand up for their rights, because for far too long, the federal government has just basically taken away the resources and given it to corporations for their profit. For us, this is more than just profit. It's about our lives, our culture. It's about our sovereignty.
Ben, thank you so much for taking some time to explain this, and we encourage everyone to get involved. And we will be with you in spirit and in voice to help bring an end to this threat to the Hopi water. You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Well, we have here a opportunity to get involved. So I want everyone really to take a moment, if they can, sign the petition. It only takes about 30 seconds. Go to traditionalhopi.org and go through the links. There's links for the White House. There's links to Senator Kyle's office, who is the senator who first put this bill forward. And there will be, I'm sure, something that will jump out at you where you can take a moment and lend your voice to support the Hopi. As I said before, it is not just about their water, their future water for their children, and clean water, and these corporations wanting to be able to do whatever they can. It's really about maintaining a delicate balance that the Hopi have been entrusted to for a very long time. And that balance revolves around their ceremonies, their traditions, which go hand in hand with water. You cannot take away one from the other. The Hopi have certain ceremonies where they go down to places where there's water. They use water in their ceremonies. I got to see this firsthand when I was out in the Hopi reservation. It, again, is something that is really important to understand, the universal mindset of the Hopi. They are the caretakers and the guardians of so much more than their own land. But as Leroy said, this balance, this harmonic balance, that has been their duty since the creation of the Hopi people so many years ago. So this has been really I think a very special moment in time when those who have never spoken before have spoken. This again is part 2. The part 1 is up at the website. If you go to robsimone.com, you'll find part 1 and part 2 up there that you can listen. If you want to download, if you want to share with anybody else, feel free to do so. We're trying to get this message out, and so far we are succeeding in that. There already has been a great momentum, and there are already people starting to be proactive. There's changes that are happening, and we just need your help for the last leg of this journey. So there may be future programs where we go even deeper into this issue, into the culture of the Hopis. And I want to thank everyone for getting involved, for making this one of the most clear examples of people listening and responding and changing the world for the better. I hope to bring you even more programs like this in the future. And stay tuned next week and the weeks to follow for updates on where this issue is. Thanks to everyone for listening and helping. I will see you next week. Cheers.